brother, it's been a couple of months because I saw you at Departure earlier this year. How was that for you, man?
Man, I love getting to do that. Interviewing Dallas Green and getting to celebrate him. He's someone that on a personal level, I really enjoy and became friends with. We got to tour together one summer back in 2009. But even before that, I was a fan. And more than a fan, he comes from St. Catharines. I come from London, Ontario. So he was this guy that he's only a couple years older than me, but, he made it feel possible in a
Yeah.
way. He wasn't he obviously he's not from hip hop, but just being from another mid-sized Southern Ontario town and doing it independently. I remember going to see him play 20 years ago at a small club in London, and it was packed out, and he was just being himself. And those moments, they stick with you, especially at that kind of formative stage that I was at when I was watching that show. Just, it filled me with a sense of like, yeah, you can do this. Like, it's really possible. It's really reachable. You can really share your music, share who you are, begin locally, and hopefully spread outward. So, anyways, that's a long answer to your first question, but just those are all the things that he means to me as a friend, as an artist that I admire, and also someone that inspired me early on. It was nice to have this moment 20 years later where he could be celebrated and I could be a part of celebrating him in front of his fans, on a platform, a major music festival in Canada. It was really nice for me.
Well, you said the word 20 years, and that's the same thing for you. Congratulations, man. It's
Thank you
20
very much.
years in the industry. I know I've interviewed you most of those 20 years. And what we're going to talk about is a new album, 7 albums deep, I do believe. Did you ever think that your career would last 20 years and we would go in 7 albums deep?
No, and I hope people believe me when I say that I did not think that. I hope people don't think that's false modesty or something like that. I really remember distinctly making my first album in 2005, and when it was done, feeling overjoyed and really feeling a strong sense of I maybe will never get to do this again. I never thought I'd get to do this. I might not ever get to do this again. I'm so glad I got to do this one time. It was really my overwhelming sense. So it's the thing I'm proudest of myself is still doing this because yeah, it takes effort, man. It takes energy and it takes effort, and those energy is not my strong suit. I'm a pretty laid back guy, and that's good in some ways, but it cuts both ways. You know, energy is not my strong suit, and I just never knew that I would get the opportunity to do this for so long, to put so much time and energy into music. So yeah, I'm very grateful, and I hope people believe me when I say it is unexpected.
It's much deserved, man. Because you've never followed trends. You've created art through your music, which is one of the reasons why you've always been a big nominee for the Polaris Music Prize. But the thing I always loved about what you do is, as much as you don't follow the trends, you do follow what's going on in the world. And your
Mhm.
music has always reflected that. Is that something that's always been important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's really a lesson I got from hip hop, because when I came up, a lot of what we were doing was live, freestyling for one another, or stepping up on stages and opening shows, this sort of thing. And so what I learned is connecting with people in the moment, which means you got to speak to what's going on in the room, in the world. You got to connect. That's how you connect in the moment. So that really imprinted on me early. That's in my DNA as an artist. Not to mention the artists that inspired me, like Lauryn Hill, Common, the Roots, some of these artists that yeah, they did a great job of unpacking who they are and wrestling with that and discovering that and expressing that in their music. But they always had one eye on the world and on their community, and trying to speak into that with some insight. And so, you know, I always wanted to be a part of that lineage as well if I ever got the chance to do it. And so that's always been important to me. And the last thing I'll say on that point is it's become more and more important to me as I've gotten older.
Yeah.
As I've had the opportunity to tell my own story a lot, I've become more and more interested. It's like I'm satisfied with that. I've done that a lot, and I'll continue to do that. But I've become more and more interested in what's going on. So I would say even my last couple albums have been more about the world and what's happening. Yeah.
But the other thing that you do, and it seems to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, a dying trend in hip hop, adding jazz elements to your music. Is that a dying element?
Yeah, I would say that you definitely don't hear it much in the mainstream.
Yeah.
Yeah, because well, it's expensive for one thing.
Mm.
I think a lot of trends in music relate to that. What's more cost effective? For example, when I was younger, there was more rap groups. Wu Tang, 9 members.
Never thought about that.
It's really hard to tour around with 9 members. It's very hard to tour around with a jazz band. It's very hard to record a jazz band, in the studio. But those sounds are so rich, and some people say jazz is America's gift to the world. Culturally, like really the greatest invention um, to come out of North America in the 20th century is jazz music. Um, and so yeah, I've always loved those sounds. I've always gravitated towards those sounds. I feel like a lot of my albums, especially my more recent albums, have involved a lot of experimentation, and this one feels like a return back to some of these sounds I've always gravitated towards, like jazz. So yeah, just happy to put that back in there. And the thing with trends too, if something is kind of missing from the scene, from the mainstream, or from hip hop in general, on one hand, it would go against the trends to include it in your music, but on the other hand, there's an opportunity in that because, well, no one or few people are doing it, so
Yeah.
it's and those people that love it, it will stand out for them.
Then let's get to it. What is the name of the new album and how does it represent you at this
Mhm.
point in your career?
Yeah, the new album is called Start Anew. One little parallel I like is that my first album 20 years ago is called When This Is Over, and so when this is over, start anew. um, as you go full circle. And I think that really is the message of the album. Is a lot of the album is actually about endings. I called it Start Anew, but it's about confronting endings. It's about this very human challenge of how do you leave what's familiar and step into the unknown. And it's a step we all have to take in many different ways. We all have to take that step. Um, but it's challenging. And the curious thing is that it's challenging even if what's familiar is toxic or destructive or hard, it's still hard to leave. People talk, for example, about being in a toxic relationship. And it's like, well, why don't you just leave? Well, it's hard to leave. It's hard to step into the unknown, right? And so this was just an idea. Well, it's evergreen, right? It's a fundamental human challenge, but it's something that I was seeing, especially on like a large scale, on like a social, political, ecological scale. This challenge of stepping into the unknown, this challenge of trying something new, of starting something new. To give an example, like I think of where we're at with the environment and the crisis around the environment. And on one hand, we know we can't continue things the way we've been doing them. We know that. And yet, it's hard to imagine and step into a new way of doing things. still requires courage. So, from all the way up on that level down to the more human level, personal level, like I mentioned, relationships or even work, for myself as an artist, it's precarious, it's scary. Um, there's risk involved, but as an artist, I think it's our responsibility to face. It's my responsibility to confront the possibility that if I take a certain risk creatively or artistically or in saying something, that it might end things for me, but still to believe there's something on the other side of taking that risk, or taking that risk is the right thing to do and it's the beginning of a new journey. It's starting anew. Hopefully I'm not getting too abstract or esoteric, but I was thinking about all these things, man. I was thinking about starting anew and how it's challenging to start anew, but that's the important first brave step that starts you on a whole story. You know what I mean? Starts you on a whole story. When this is over, start anew. You start a whole new journey, a whole new. People can't necessarily see me drawing a circle with my finger, but I do believe stories go in that circular way. You start somewhere familiar, and then you take a step of courage, and you step out, and then you come back, and then you do it again.
It's funny. When did you start recording this album and writing? I'm just
Yeah.
curious, and there's a reason why.
Okay. Yeah. I started a couple years ago. It's been a long time
Oh,
chipping away at it. Yeah.
okay, so a couple of years ago, the reason why I asked that is because when I listened to the album, I was actually reflecting more on what has been going on in the world right now,
Mm,
especially in the last 8, 9 months.
mm.
And a lot of things I heard you say, I was looking at on the things that we see on social media, the news, and things like that. And then hearing what you just had to say, I feel like it's a challenge just to walk out the door these days and face what we have to face because for somebody like myself, I feel like um the attack is like this now. And that's why I felt like your music was reflecting on how we have to almost literally prepare our own being every
Yeah,
time we wake up and step out the door.
yeah, no, that's great, and I think that is a lot of the messages, on the album. There's a lot of songs. I'm thinking of a song called "Look." Actually, there's two parts to that song that are on
Yes.
the album, that are about how we have to confront reality. We got to look at reality, and we also have to put one foot in front of the other. And if you do that every so often, you can look backwards and realize how far you've come. But there's no shortcut.
No.
It's one foot in front of the other. And it also involves, again, this really challenging thing of looking at reality, looking at the reality, sometimes the painful reality of where we're at. And where we're at sometimes feels like the end of something. Absolutely. You look at so many things in our world and it's like, okay, man, this is tough. And yet I have to somehow figure out a way to not ignore that, but still put one foot in front of the other.
Hmm.
There's another song called Islands that's very much about that. The song starts with, you can't do all things. Don't dream big till you handle small things. Let's just take it one step at a time. And because that first courageous step begets the next one, and it becomes a habit. And we will get somewhere if we do that.
It's funny. I had a conversation with two friends of mine yesterday on that exact same thing. Speaking of friends, collaborations on
Yes.
this. Who are they?
Yeah, yeah. So I always love to work with people. How can I put it? With voices that I trust,
Hmm.
because I start working on the album with a strong sense of what I'm trying to say. Like I was just describing with this idea of start anew. And so I want to include voices that I trust, which often means people that I know personally or have collaborated with before. But just voices that I trust to share with my audience. So, a lot of folks from around here. There's so much talent here. I The nice thing is I don't have to look very far. So John Kabongo, dope young artist. Raz Fresco, another dope young artist. Phoenix Pagliacci, who I've worked with a lot in the last 6, 7, 8 years. I'm trying to think of other voices on the album. Homeboy Sandman from Queens, singer Shantae Khan from Atlanta, that I've connected with both of them a bit online and collaborated with before. So yeah, a lot of voices from around here, but also spread out a little bit of everywhere. But all people that I've connected with and that I trust and that are talented and thoughtful artists.
Fantastic. Tour wise, anything gonna happen there?
Yes, so the first few dates have been announced. First handful of dates, a few out west, Hamilton, Guelph, out around here, and then we're gonna add some more. And this tour for me feels like I wanted to do something different because it doesn't just feel like an album release tour. It feels like a 20th anniversary thing for me. So I've put out the word in my newsletter or anytime I post about the tour that if you buy tickets, message me, email me your song requests, also your banter requests, like whatever you want to hear me talk about. And then I have kind of a spreadsheet where I'm keeping track of the different cities, what people have requested, and I want each show to be a little different based on that. So it's a little bit more intimate, a little more tailored to who's in the room, just a little bit of a deeper connection on this tour in that way. It's going to require relearning a lot of old lyrics, but that's okay. I'm up for it. I'm up for the challenge. Just wanted to do something a little different, a little special. The nice thing at this point when I play a show is even if the faces aren't people that I know from my personal life, they're familiar faces a lot of times. They're people that I've seen at shows 5, 6, 7, 10 times. And so, I just kind of want to acknowledge that and honor that by having a more kind of intimate concert experience this time.
Man, I gotta say, I am so happy for you.
Man, thank you.
And I am honored to be able to chronicle your story of stories for the last several years. Congratulations on 20 years. Congratulations on this album, and looking forward to talking to you in the
Yeah.
next 20 years, man. It's much deserved.
Man, thanks, Rudy. It is great to chat with you again. And yeah, I can't think of the first time we spoke, but it has been the whole journey. It's dope.